What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at Occupy Fantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I am your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. Co-founder and data guru here at Occupy Fantasy, alongside Brian at Brian Jester FF on Twitter. He is the co-founder and CEO of Occupy Fantasy. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Moose? Got a wedding to go to later today. It's the first fall activity that I'm required to go to. So the process and routine changes up a little bit, but excited to get outside for a change on a Saturday.
Also, and you got to say, shout out to whoever's wedding you're going to, having it on the 1 week UFC is off. So
I know, pretty impressive. Thanks to UFC for canceling the slate this week. It's much appreciated.
Definitely. But we're here to talk about week 5 over on DraftKings and FanDuel for some NFL DFS picks and strategy. And we'll start off from a very high level. If you guys have questions or gals have questions, we're going to be here for about 30 minutes or so, answering questions, breaking down the slate. We do these shows on Saturdays, so if you guys can ask questions, we can answer a little bit longer, as opposed to just 10, 15 minutes before kickoff, and we just say this answer, one quick sentence. We can actually go into great detail and explain the things why we say certain things for certain answers. And Brian, I will say things seem to fall in place pretty easily this week. I'll start that from a very high level. We can go a little bit further down in grain detail if we need to. But I did want to start off, seems like running backs can fit well, wide receivers can fit well. We got some good tight end situations. Overall, it seems like a pretty easy slate to do it the way you want to do it.
It actually does. Unlike last week, where we were absolutely struggling and just trying to find game stacks and still didn't end up on the one that scored 93 points. It's a much easier week, right? We got two big favorites that are easy to stack whichever way you want. We got at least one, probably two competitive games that look very stackable with high totals. And yeah, it looks pretty straightforward this week. Even the mega stacking we were talking about in the Tuesday Million Mission for small field contest looks right for those types of lineups this week as well. So pretty straightforward. The only thing I would say is I think the field will build lineups pretty similarly. So you could fall into a trap where you build optimally like we like to, 3-1 stacks, mid-range running backs, all this stuff, and end up with like 7 guys, 15% or more. So just be careful about that. That's the one pitfall as I was building lineups this morning that we have to be mindful of.
Exactly, yeah. Let's see here. So we already have some questions to start off with. What's up, Ed? Thomas says the corpse of AJ Green. Yeah. James says, if we think Brady is going to be the chalk, is it fade off of that Fournette and Tampa Bay defense?
The direct fade is, but if you played Showdown last week and you remember what Ken wrote in the Showdown plug, is that Tampa Bay is trying their hardest not to give Leonard Fournette 90% of snaps like they did weeks 1 through 3. And that actually materialized. Sometimes coaches say shit and it doesn't actually happen. But Rachaad White got a decent amount of work. And if this game is a blowout, you have to imagine that if the game script holds as projected, that Fournette sees maybe even less work this week. I would say, I think instead of, because I like the Brady stack so much, right? It's just far too cheap. Right, you can fade it, but at Moose, as we know, is if we're going to fade someone here, it's probably running backs, not necessarily cheap passing game pieces. Brady 6K on DraftKings, Godwin 5,900. I would just rather stack that game and just play, because not many people are going to play Brady, Godwin, and Evans, or Brady, Godwin, and Otten, or even Brady, Fournette, and Godwin. Right, they're going to 2-man stack it for sure, but the 3-man stacks, as we always know, are less. Moose, I would prefer just to overstack it rather than pivot off it entirely in a single lineup.
Yeah, in a single lineup, absolutely. And while we're on that Tampa Bay stack, Godwin, Evans, both, 15, 20% each on DraftKings. If you wanted to pivot, do you think you could pivot off any of them? Maybe go Gage, maybe go Julio Jones. Do you think any of those would be worth pivoting to?
That's tough, man. Maybe for large field, include them in your player pool, but like if you're making a small field or you're hand building, it's really hard to get behind that. Julio could play more this week. He's still dealing with the knee injury. Gage was a clear number 3 last week with Godwin and Evans back. So it's kind of tough. It's really tough. Yeah, I think you just play those guys to eat it because there's so many other different ways to get different outside of that. And again, not many people are going to 3-man stack it despite what the ownership says.
Yeah. Ace, what's up? He says, hey guys, how do you balance being too contrarian in small field GPPs? I feel like I sacrifice too many projected points.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I would go back if you haven't already and listen to Tuesday's $1 Million Mission where we talked about the mega stacking. That's one way to get different, and you could play more highly projected points guys, projected owns, however you want to define that. If you get different by the type of stack that you're creating, that's one way. The other way is, you only have to get different in a couple spots in small field. You're still stacking. So I would say that the line of construction really is where you're getting different, not necessarily the players that you're picking. Hopefully that makes it better for you.
Yep. And as we saw even last Tuesday, I believe it was last week where it was a very chalky lineup that won.
Yeah.
Or was it the week before?
No, it was last week. It was the
week.
highest owned $1 million highest owned $1 million winning lineup in the last like 3 or 4 years or something.
Yeah. So depending on how you build your lineup, you can still be a little chalky and still be good to go. Ed says, "Here's my question: Who broke the model? Kyler? ? Plus sign."
So Moose, this is one where I'm gonna play it because that game stack looks really good, but we have to be really careful because they're gonna be missing their starting center, potentially 2 offensive linemen. In addition to that, are very questionable, may not play. So obviously we don't want to see that, but at least they got Rondale Moore back, and he should be fine for this week. Marquise Brown, AJ Green back. So like the offense is running a little better, and they're gonna be forced to throw. So the model's picking up on something here. And again, as we said at the beginning of the year, model usually doesn't like running quarterbacks for tournaments, but this year it's picked up on it heavily. And we've seen that come to fruition a decent amount. So yeah, we've been on Kyler every week for the past 5 years. So we're not going to stop now. If the model confirms it, we're definitely going to play it.
It's like, oh, the model has Kyler ranked 31st and not 32nd. I'm playing him. That's pretty much our strategy. I like that. I imagine that's because it's the highest team total or the highest total in the game of the slate. That was a weird way for me to say that. I don't see anything going against that. Ed also says, "I love the Tampa Bay 3 or 4 buy with mini stacks of Buffalo Jacksonville."
I like it. I mean, I like Tampa Bay 3. And again, you can fit Tampa Bay 4 moves because that comes into Sean's question here with the Tampa Bay tight end who we haven't talked about yet.
Sean says, "People are punting tight end with Otten against Atlanta. By that same logic, can we jam in Patrick S. and large field GPPs? YOLO?"
No, probably not. And there's a couple of reasons for that. We know, at least beat reporters are telling us, and based on Otten's position on the depth chart being active over Kyle Rudolph, Otten's the guy. Parker Hess has played more snaps and has caught more passes than Anthony Firkser this year. But that's just because Kyle Pitts is on the field and Parker Hess is their blocking tight end. If you look specifically just at last week, Parker Hess played 48 total snaps. Firkser played just 10, but they ran the same number of routes. Hess is out there blocking 90% of the time he's on the field. If someone's going to fill the move tight end, the Y tight end, whatever you want to call it, catching passes, it's going to be Firkser, who Arthur Smith brought in from his time in Tennessee when he was a pass-catching tight end. Hess is going to stay in his same blocking role. So if you're going to play any cheap tight end from Atlanta, I would play Firkser.
Okay, makes sense. And I was wondering. I was like, Patrick Hess. I was like, that sounds like I don't remember who that was, and I Google it, and I know it's because the first name was misspelled, but it's also a French football coach, and I was like, what is going on? I was like, is he like 7th on the depth chart? No.
We are digging deep in week 5.
Definitely. Ed says Godwin has 9 touchdowns in his last 9 games against Atlanta. Also look at Brady stacks against Atlanta since he's in Tampa. I think that could be a little noisy. Those trends don't hold weight year over year. I don't know if you want
coaching staffs just play Brady and Godwin because they're underpriced and in a good spot, not necessarily because of what they did to Atlanta in 2012.
And then when you win the 333 ticket ad, then you can say that's the reason why, and everything. Everyone will think you're a fish.
Exactly right.
But yeah, speaking of Bucks, do you would you bring, as David asked, would you bring it back 3-0 or 3-1? Which one do you prefer there, Brian?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's the ultimate question this week. We see Brady as a 10.5-point favorite, and we see Josh Allen 14-point favorite. This is one of the first weeks we had multiple double-digit favorites. We haven't had really many double-digit favorites at all this year. Mm-hmm. But as we talked about last year some, and our friends over at Number Fire, Jim Sanas, wrote an article talking about how generally game stacks don't get there for these larger totals, right? For our larger spreads, 10-plus points. Last year was a little different. It got there a little more often, but the trend shows over the past 4 or 5 years that when you have a spread of 10-plus, you're not really looking to bring it back, or you don't have to bring it back. In this case, I think you can because Drake London's super cheap, no Kyle Pitts. But most also to that point, right, the defense can just focus on Drake London in the passing game, not literally worry about anybody else. So when in doubt, I say when it's a 10-plus point favorite, I wouldn't bring him back, right? If London fits in perfectly, sure, that's great. But if not, I would start with Rio and build my lineup that way, and then last piece in if London fits, you can do it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. Cody says, how do you like the Pats backfield against Detroit?
Good question. They seem pretty popular. I don't know if I've ever seen a situation where two running backs from the same team are projected for 15+% ownership in the same week, which is nuts. You got to imagine, Moose, I imagine, right, with Belichick and rookie quarterback, they're going to run the ball as much as they can. And Detroit struggles against the run. They're missing two of their four defensive linemen. They're going to run Harris and Stevenson nonstop in this game. So I see why. And I can easily see them playing both. I think maybe Harris is the better play. Stevenson's been getting more work on third downs, obviously. And if they control the game, then Harris is probably the guy there. Both are good plays. Both are great plays, great matchup. Probably a good game plan for them as well.
Makes sense. Answer these two quick questions, then we'll go into game stacks, and then we'll follow back up with the next set of questions. Michael says, I'm calling it now. The Steelers and Bills game is going to go off. I'm playing the Steelers side only, and Pickett will be my quarterback in all 150 of my lineups.
Just
Very
donate
bold.
to charity instead. No, just donate to charity instead. We're getting close to Thanksgiving and Christmas, Michael. Just give to local shelters, people in need, instead of lighting your money on fire.
Yeah. The only thing I would say to that, if that's really true, like if the Bills do blow up, then maybe you want to have just a little bit of them on their side. So, yeah, I would do that. All right, so really quick, let's go to game stacks. And as you see here on the plug, occupyfantasy.com/NFL Daily Plug, I'm going to actually scroll down, and if you guys want to pause, who aren't subscribed, and take a screenshot, this is what the motto is, or the daily plug is. 3 stacks of the week. Again, we talked about the Buffalo side, Tampa Bay side. They're large favorites, so we're not necessarily recommending bringing them back. And then the last one, Philly at Arizona. We talked a little bit about the Arizona side. But Brian, what do you think about Philly here?
Yeah, so this is it's a great game environment. It should be. So, it's expensive, but we know clear past the targets on both sides. So I get it. It's something, I don't know what it is, Moose. Something inside me is the spidey senses are tingling about this stack failing in some way, probably because Arizona stacks fail every single time we play them. But something's inside saying there's something about this game. I'm still going to play it, but just remember this moment for Sunday night when the game is 24-13 or something, and it's not optimal. I don't know. There's something about it. I get it. Very clear way to play it. It's easy to play it. I get it. There's this something inside. I don't know what do you feel about it?
I have the same exact way, right? We have 2 quarterbacks with rushing upside. They can easily get there with fantasy points, but I have some hesitancy to play them. I'll probably play them as well, but with rushing quarterbacks, most of the time you don't really want to do 3x1, 3x2s, these mega stacks. Maybe you want to go 2x1, maybe even 2x0 if you're feeling cautious there.
Sure. I think that's fine.
Now, there was one stack, Brian, that it's like the opposite of popping off, but we say if you like a stack, you find a good thing about it, play it. They're literally the worst ranked stack in my rankings. However, I think I'm going to play them. I want to get your opinion on them.
Okay.
What do you think about a commander stack this week? I mean, you can get Wentz, who, has moments. Pair him up with, because Jahan Dotson's out, get him with underperforming wide receiver Terry McLaurin.
Yep.
Run it back with, I'm trying to think who, with Derrick Henry, #1 in the running back model. Even if you wanted to add another wide receiver, maybe you add Curtis Samuel, who's doing well. You can get Super Galaxy Brain if Logan Thomas is out, play Bates. It seems like there's enough pieces there. I don't necessarily think you go mega stack or anything, but even if you went just a 2x1, I feel like with Jahan Dotson out, target's going to be a little more concentrated. You could pick one or two, I guess, Wentz, McLaurin, Samuel, running back with Derrick Henry, and they're kind of cheap. It opens up a lot more spots. I'm curious to get your opinion on it.
Dude, I like it. As I was looking through stuff, I was like, man, I'm a little scared not to play this one. I feel like it could go off. And I'll give you one final reason, Moose, why I agree. Because you laid it out perfectly. I agree with everything you said on why it's a great stack. And it's a great, the pieces you laid out are perfect to stack. The final piece of that puzzle is Tennessee is missing Zach Cunningham, their middle linebacker. They're missing their best edge rusher in Bud Dupree. They're missing their starting safety, Amani Hooker. And their starting cornerback, their number one cornerback, Farley, is extremely questionable to play. So yeah, at least 3, maybe 4 guys that are going to be out on defense. I mean, we know we love targeting those games. So I'm with the Moose.
Yeah, crazy. And I mean, you could do something we talked about, as you see here on the stack side. Excuse me. We usually recommend playing 6 quarterbacks. 1, 2, 3, 4. You need 2 more. Well, Carson Wentz could be that one. And they play on primetime next week, so they're not going to suck this week. They're going to suck next week because every primetime game is just the worst game ever. Yeah.
Right. I actually, I like yours better than the other one I'm picking.
Okay, I'm curious to see which other ones is.
I think it just missed the cut for Chris. The other one I like is the Chargers and the Browns game. Going back to the Browns, again this week for whatever reason. But they played pretty fast for the most part. And if we can get them behind in this game, then maybe they can pass a little more than they're used to. Obviously, the issue is the Chargers are missing Rashawn Slater. He's out for the year. They're starting left tackle. Browns get back both Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. So that's a little scary. But Herbert's one of the best at turning pressures into non-sacks. So that saves me a bit in that stack. Plus, again, clear sides, right? Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, Joshua Palmer, Austin Eckler. On the Brown side, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's had 2 games where he hasn't been targeted much, and he's had 2 games with like 200 air yards each. So like, which Donovan Peoples-Jones role we get, I don't know, but you're playing 150 max, definitely throw him in your stacks. I like that game a lot. Yeah. It's one of the more competitive high total games.
Sounds like one of those weeks where, and I'm also curious to get your thought on this as well. I don't necessarily know how reasonable it would be for 150. We talk about this sometimes with 20 max or 3-entry max mostly, but what if you just have a core of guys and you go 80 to 100% on those core of guys, let's say 3 to 5 guys, and then you rotate around 6, 7, maybe even 8 stacks that you like, because there does seem to be a lot of options this week. Especially if you're like 20 maxing, you like all these different stacks, but you really think these core guys are going to go off. I think that could be a possible move too.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, let's say you like Olave, you like Jeff Wilson, you like Dameon Pierce, Godwin, like these like very obviously underpriced guys, right? You play those guys and then you rotate the stack. I like that idea. I mean, that's a clear 20 max move for sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's get back to the questions here. Let's see. Where am I at? David says, why is Zeke so high in the model?
Yeah, good question. Pollard's questionable. I think he'll play. Maybe that impacts it a little bit. But it's one of those situations where Moose, there's not much upside there. I wouldn't. I mean, I know the model says it, but there's some guys that it ranks pretty well. But there are guys that aren't going to smash. They might exceed it, like barely exceed expectations, but they're not. He's not going to score 30, 40 points. So.
Yeah, as we say that he'll score 4 touchdowns. Yeah. Let's see here. What's your thoughts on Michael Bandy?
Man, we got Parker Hess questions and Michael Bandy questions on a 12-game main slate. And it's not preseason, so I'm confused. I get Bandy caught some passes last week. Joshua Palmer was in and out of the game with an ankle injury, but he's going to play this week. So, no need to play the Chargers wide receiver 4 on a 12-game slate.
Michael says, don't sleep on CMC and Kittle. What's your thoughts on either of those players?
Yeah, CMC, number 2 overall fantasy pick. Can't sleep on him.
And I'm trying to think, George Kittle's top of the model. I always have this conundrum where, don't get me wrong, Kittle's really good, but 5,200 where you can get potentially $1,000 to $2,000 savings, where you're basically punting and hoping that they can get some targets.
Not to mention that Kittle just hasn't
performed.
I mean, he just hasn't, right? Like, there's been a couple games over the past 2 years. So I get if he gives you one of those games, then you're in really good shape. When are you going to get those games, right? You're going to go bankrupt trying to chase those games. So it's tough. He does rank top 5 in the model this week, but that there's no Andrews, no Kelsey, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, and then we are getting a lot of off the wall. Is it Kyle Phillips season?
Fuck's sake, dude! Guys, play the good plays. I understand we want to win tournaments. It's not Kyle Phillips. It's not Parker Hess. It's not Michael Bandy. Like, if you're playing Showdown, yeah, go for these guys. Don't stop. Guys, stop.
What about Robert Woods, as Leon points out? Is
Much
he good
better.
enough?
Much better. Yes, he's actually a receiver who's on the field all the time. Yes, Robert Woods is a great idea. No Treylon Burks. So I get it, right? Like Kyle Phillips maybe because Treylon Burks is out. They don't even play the same role. So Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is going to get more snaps as a result of Treylon Burks being out, not Kyle Phillips. So guys, wide receiver 1s and 2s, please.
Yeah. Back to CMC. David asks, is he a good leverage play for high risk small field?
Yeah, I think we got him at what 5 or 6% or something, and they're using him a little more in the passing game. He's top 10 in expected fantasy points. Finally, it took a few weeks to get there, but he is. And San Francisco's missing their 2 interior defensive linemen. Javon Kinlaw, he's missed the last couple of games. Eric Armstead, he's out as well. So again, two interior defensive linemen being out is always good for the run game. So yeah, I like it. I like it for sure as a leverage play, and you can make it work on FanDuel for sure.
Definitely. Brian, I don't know if it's just we talk about it more or not, but has there been more injuries, at least defensive injuries, this season compared to previous years?
I think it's roughly in line. I think we're just highlighting it a little more this year after we saw what happened in week 2 at the Miami game and the result of that, and we're just we're chasing that dragon. So yeah, I think it just as we talk about it a little more, I think it's pretty much in line with the previous years.
Okay, makes sense. Cool. So we have about 8 minutes left. Do you all have any more last lingering questions? We'll go ahead and answer them. However, I do want to bring this up. Brian, let me pull the wide receiver model up.
Really called it last week, Moose. You got the Devontae Parker call. I saw someone comment on the video.
I know. So for people watching and they're not subscribed, go ahead and screenshot the quarterback model here as I go to the wide receiver model. I'll be friendly today. And then, so really quick, for those who are new, we do have the underperforming wide receiver filter. You want to screenshot the underperforming wide receivers on the video. There it is.
Giving away almost.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta appreciate the hustle for the people who've been here for the last 30 minutes or so. Cool. So, as we talked about it before, under 10% and under $5,000 on DraftKings. Brian, who gets there for who scores that touchdown?
Under 5K and 10% or less?
Yeah.
He's 2% on DraftKings. No one's going to play him. I'm going to play him heavily. It's Darnell Mooney. Right?
Ooh,
Again, Chicago passes less than a 1920s offense. I get it. Minnesota's not going to let them do that, right? Minnesota's going to get up, ideally, unless this game's like 7-3 in the third quarter. Ideally, Minnesota forces them to pass a little more. We actually saw them pass a little more last week. Mooney, 90-something total yards, underperforming. And, this is a guy that was being drafted in the 6th round of fantasy drafts, right? Clear number 1 receiver. If they have to pass a little more, even if they don't pass a little more, and he just connects on the 7 opportunities he gets, Mooney's a great tournament play this week.
Okay, I dig it. I'm trying to think. I'm looking here. Oh man, it's funny. Kyle Phillips shows up here, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm gonna go Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I think.
Okay, you're gonna go with the
actual good play. Definitely.
Well, if you go Devontae Parker, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine back-to-back touchdown calls, then yeah, FBI is gonna be on the phone.
Definitely. Sean says favorite inexpensive day this week, and didn't buy lunch this Wednesday, so I'd probably say Wednesday. But I know he's talking about defense. Brian, I don't know if this is Galaxy Brain. What do you think about? I mean, we talked about this stack potentially fail. If you think this stack fails, I think Arizona could be a good defensive play. They're third in the model.
Min Price.
What do you think? Yeah, basically Min Price.
Yeah, I think that's the call on DraftKings. Our model has them top 3. And then on the FanDuel side, if you're looking at it, probably it's got to be Seattle. I like Seattle on both sides, honestly. I know Jameis Winston quarterbacked the first 3 weeks, but Andy Dalton quarterbacked last week, and opposing defenses have scored at least 6 points against New Orleans in every game this year. Jameis's fuck it attitude has something to do with that. But again, Dalton's not great either. So Seattle defense, 5 points or 2,500 on DK, 3,100 on FanDuel, top 5 in the model on both sites. Really cheap defense. I think can get after it.
Makes sense. As a best worst and worst best.
All right. So that means the worst highest owned player and the best lowest owned player, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be Fournette as the worst best play, right? Most with all the talk
Yeah.
of reducing his touches, and he's going to be 20% owned.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, it's got to be Fournette, right? So it's got to be Fournette. As far as the best worst play, I'm gonna do running back, right? I'm gonna go sub
Okay.
5% running back, which is generally hard to find, right? You find a sub 5% running back, there's probably, there's reasons people aren't playing it. I will go. Oh, that's actually pretty gross. I don't even know if I'll do anything there. Maybe let's see sub 10%.
Well, I was
What do
going
you
to
think,
say,
Moose?
so like the best worst play, meaning under 5%. I mean, there's a handful of people there. I mean, could you go? I mean, do they still have to be a terrible player under 5%?
They can be a good player, sure.
I mean, because I'm just thinking, you have CMC, Zeke, Chubb, Chase Edmonds, all players that are under 5%, which I think all could very easily fail. We just talked about Zeke having a hard time hitting ceiling. I think that could be it there.
Wait, so you're saying they're not good plays, or they are good plays?
Oh shit! I
We're trying to
misread the
find
question.
we're trying to find the best worst play, not the worst play.
Yes, don't play these guys because they suck and they're not popular. Okay, sorry.
Most of the genius touting. That's an easy segment. What about Zach Ertz, Moose? 4% in that game stack.
Ugh.
Number 5 tight end in the model, 4,800, 4% owned in the highest total of the week, basically.
Yeah, I mean, 4,800, a little expensive on the tight end side, but not. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think that could get you there. Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Here's the answer, Moose. We'll close it out with here because you talked about him, and it's in the article, it's in the plug. But the actual best play that's under 5% is Terry McLaurin. 2% projected ownership, underperforming wide receiver against a defense missing 3, maybe 4 guys, with one of his running mates out. That's the perfect storm, right? That's the Julio at the World Fantasy Football Championship. Teammates out, defense missing players, and they're already underperforming. That is Terry McLaurin this week. He is 2% owned. He is top 10 in the model. No one's going to play him. Even if you don't want to stack wins, just play Scary Terry.
And you forgot the most important part. It is spooky season.
It's spooky season, so you got to play the guy with the name Terry, Scary Terry.
Yes, definitely. So let me see if there's any last lingering questions. Let's see. David says, thanks for your help. Let's see. Jenna asked about a single entry contest that they hand built. Playing Derrick Henry twice is good.
Yeah, if you can get Terry Henry in there twice.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Get Terry McLaurin in there somehow, Jenna. We just talked about him. Get Terry McLaurin instead of Curtis Samuel, or with Curtis Samuel, and it'll be a better lineup somehow.
Yeah, cool. So, Brian, any last lingering thoughts before I take us out of here?
No. You see the 4 main stacks that Chris likes. We're on those as well. Play those this week. If you want to sprinkle in some other stacks, I really like Moose's Washington call. I'm also on the Chargers in Cleveland. Probably mostly the Charger side if you don't want to get too frisky. So just keep that in mind as you're building tonight and tomorrow.
Definitely. So that'll do it for tonight's show. If you have any more questions, there is the Discord, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. You can learn how to join. If you want to show us some support, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you are feeling very generous, go ahead and also join our YouTube membership. Totally not needed. If you want to show your support, you can. Again, if you have questions, Discord, Twitter, Instagram DMs, email. You have a question, we'll figure a way to answer it. Chris will be doing a live Q&A tomorrow on our Discord, which is pretty awesome.
Okay, Chris was a DMP today with an illness. I might have to call him tomorrow, but so we'll see.
Okay. Someone will be doing a live show tomorrow on Discord. Very cool, very interactive. Gives me the old Periscope vibes. But yeah, so I really do like those. And then we'll be back on Tuesday to review Brian's lineups, how he did. Hopefully we are staying in the green. But until next time, Moose and Brian from Occupy Fantasy, have a good night.